If you're aiming to win the crown, your communication has to reflect 3 basic qualities: leadership, clarity, and presence. This episode is for serious competitors who are done playing small. Welcome back to the Conquer podcast. If you're new here, I'm your coach Nikita Tanwani, former Femina Miss India state winner, founder of Conquer with Nikita Tanwani, and I'm your host today. And in today's episode, we're going to talk about how do you master the pageant interview like a boss. First things first, pageant interviews are not about the questions. They are executive level conversations. You're not a contestant who is waiting to get evaluated, but you're a potential brand ambassador. You're a spokesperson. You're a visionary. So the next time you walk into a pageant interview, you walk in with the energy of a CEO. When we think of leadership and clarity, there are 2 main things, and let's simplify that, right? 1, she has structure, and 2, she has the right energy. So let's think about, how does a CEO give structured and confident responses to any question, whether it's an interview room, whether it's a board meeting or a press conference. She's confident, she's concise, and she's extremely clear. Every sentence that she speaks has an intention, and it's not repetitive, there's no rambling, and whatever she says has substance, and it's moving the conversation forward. There's a reason for every single word that she says. And that's exactly how you want to speak during the interview as well. So to simplify things, there's a framework that I'll share with you. We call this the PrEP framework, and it's not just used by interview contestants. It's also used by celebrities in many interviews. I've noticed Priyanka Chopra actually used this framework in a bunch of her interviews, and I'm sure every other public person is using it as well. So PrEP stands for PREP, point, reason, explanation, point. Now, another way of simplifying this framework or looking at it from a different lens is you make your point, you answer what the exact question is, the reason and the explanation is why you have that opinion, why you had made that point. This can be a story, an anecdote, an explanation to what you just said, and then you summarize and come back to the same point. You always circle back to the main message and motive. And in other ways, you can also think of the last P and the last point as your impact or belief statement. So how does this work in a pageant interview scenario? I've heard this so many times, the cliche pageant patty sentences like I stand for women's empowerment or women's education or mental health, right? You don't want to just say those things because honestly, every judge is probably thinking, why should I believe you? So instead of saying that, if you use the framework, this is how the exact same message would be rephrased. I am passionate about women's education because I believe that education is the cornerstone of confidence. Then you move on to a story, a reason, and this is where you give the proof. I've worked with 200 women through my project XYZ. This can be your advocacy platform. Whatever venture you've been working on doesn't always need to have a name, but kind of helps to have a name because you can then say more in lesser words. And this is the transformation I have observed, which in the case of women's education can look like I have firsthand witnessed how education transforms self-worth. And it's not just about living a dream, but also being able to see a bigger dream. And that is why I advocate for, and then you move on with whatever your impact statement is. That is how a leader communicates. The second thing that all CEOs and leaders have in common, and this is the factor that distinguishes them, because it's not just about your talent or your knowledge or your experience, and it is not just about also having structure, it's the energy that you carry with you when you walk into a room. This energy says that I belong here and I don't need your validation. A winner is not there to prove her worth. She's there to share her vision, and she's inviting the organization to collaborate with her. The most common mistake that I see contestants making, in fact, especially during practice interviews, is also because they're trying so hard to be perfect. And perfect does not get you that far. It's also not that sustainable. And honestly, perfectionism is exhausting. As a content creator for the past 6 years, believe me, I've been there, I've done those mistakes, and I can tell you that I no longer strive for perfectionism. What I do strive for now is excellence. And so when you step into leadership aura and energy, the tone with which you talk, the energy that you carry into the room, the pace, all of it is about owning your story and sharing your message. One instance that I remember right now is a few weeks ago, I was working with a client who recently placed first runner-up at Miss Universe India Karnataka at her very first attempt. And just a couple of days before her pageant competition, we were having a conversation about what stereotypes has she broken. Now, the most common answer to breaking stereotypes in pageants somehow tends to become about the appearance, your complexion, your height, and things about how you belong in this industry, and the candidate ending up saying things that, see, I belong here, because she's trying to prove her worth. She's trying to ask for validation without even realizing it. And that's exactly the mistake that my client was making too. She, in fact, is 5'2". So let this be a reminder to you that a 5'2" candidate can place first runner-up at her first ever attempt at a Miss Universe India state competition. It is possible, and you can be that person too. What we did in our coaching session and what we rephrased is I reminded her that you might be shorter than most candidates, but the fact that you're not breaking a stereotype by being short because your height does not define you. Throughout our conversation, we ended up realizing, and this is a fact that somehow she had forgotten to mention, she has interned at ISRO, which is huge. And I would honestly rather know about her ISRO achievement than how short she is. And I don't want that to be her story. In fact, I can tell, the judges can all see what your height is. You don't need to make that the focus or the highlight of your story. I would rather have someone walk in, know what she brings to the table, because how many other women in that room have interned at ISRO? And so when we did that rephrase, this is not just about what story she's sharing with the judges and what stereotypes she's breaking, because there's not too many women who go from ISRO to Miss Universe India, but that is the stereotype that she has broken. But when she did that rephrasing, it also shifted something in her internally. The energy with which she walked into the room was no longer coming from, I'm breaking stereotype because I'm 5'2", but now she's walking into the room knowing that the stereotype that she's breaking has nothing to do with her appearance, but all to do with how intelligent and smart of a woman she is. How many women do you know who have been at ISRO and have also managed to be in the top 3 of Miss Universe India? And so this is the kind of reframing that happens when you truly do the inner work, when you no longer need validation from an organization, when you're not looking at yourself as a 5'2" person and you're changing your self-image. It changes the energy with which you walk into the room. And it was not her answer or the structure or the words that made her win. It was this mindset shift. It was the way that she perceived herself had changed, which had a huge factor to play in placement as first runner-up on her very first attempt. Other factors that also have a huge role to play into the energy that is being perceived when you walk into a room is your pace. Leaders are not rushing. They're okay with taking pauses. They're okay with thinking about the next word that comes out of their mouth. And they know that the other people will want to wait because they have something important to say. So it's all right if somebody has to wait to listen. They're not walking into the pageant with the energy of, I'm sorry, I'm wasting your time here. They're there because they have an important message to share. They know that they're not wasting anybody's time. In fact, it's a privilege to be in her presence. And there's a fine line between entitlement and knowing that you belong. Leaders are also super aware and conscious of the tone that they're using. A lot of contestants I've worked with, sometimes what we work with them is not the answer, but rather the vocal tone at the end of their answer. If you're questioning yourself on the inside, if the voice in your head is saying, who do you think you are? If self-doubt is the primary emotion you generally live and feel, it will reflect in your vocal tone. And so when you end your answer, there's a hint of a question mark sometimes. It's like, I'm not sure if I said the right thing. That energy doesn't exist when you know that you truly belong and that your vision is important and it's relevant. And lastly, leadership energy is about having an open body language. Pay attention to how are you sitting in an interview. Are you composed, or do you have a pretty giggly, nervous energy? Are you rocking and tapping your feet? Are you wringing your hands? All of that gives away the nervous energy. In fact, this is such a small point, but also makes such a difference. The second you walk into the room, ask yourself, do you turn around to close the door and show your back to the judges? Or do you close the door behind you and always face the judges? Those are two ways of entering a room. And when I work with my clients, we work on the smallest of behavior nuances, because that speaks volumes about your confidence before you've even sat down for the actual interview. And this one's a cliche, but leaders are prepared. They anticipate what the conversation will go like. They already know how to predict because they have an interview strategy. Because when they were talking, they were not just answering questions and giving somebody else control of the conversation, but rather they knew exactly how the conversation will go, what to anticipate, what kind of cross questions might happen. And they have their elevator pitch prepared so well that when it happens to be an onstage question, or no matter what the format of the competition is, sometimes in some pageants they also have this format where you're asked to just give a speech on a random topic in 30 to 60 seconds. And sometimes the pageant organization just throws in a weird twist to the pageant format. I mean, different pageants have different sorts of things that happen all the time. It's about having the confidence that no matter what they throw at you, my elevator pitch is so sorted and so solidified that no matter what the topic of the conversation, because I know what my vision is, what my plan is, I know why my intention of being in this pageant and for wanting the crown and the title is so clear, that it doesn't matter what they ask you. In fact, maybe you get an unexpected question, such as, do pageants objectify women? Or do you think pageants are even still relevant in today's era? And you can always use the framework of bridge and build when it comes to unexpected questions. What bridge and build means is you acknowledge what the situation is. And this is why people skills are so important. This is why it's important for a leader to also be really good at picking up social cues. You see where the judge is coming from. You acknowledge their bias. You acknowledge the situation. And yes, that might be true. There is a certain section of society who does think that pageants are no longer relevant, and I've reflected upon that situation, and here's what my opinion is. And you go back and bridge the gap between your vision and somebody who has a very differing opinion. And then you build on with value. And so leaders are always able to take control of the conversation with grace. Winners don't panic, they just pivot. And so to sum up, in order to master the interview like a CEO and like a leader, you don't walk into the interview room trying to win. You walk in ready to lead, you speak with a vision, and you're not there because you need to win, but because you're an asset to the organization, and they would be lucky to have you as the title holder because you already are that person. If you like this episode, give it a big thumbs up, and I would love to hear from you in the comments section below. In the next episode, we're going to be talking about how important is it to be committed to a certain title. If you've been enjoying this series, do consider hitting the subscribe button and share this episode with a fellow contestant. I'll see you on the next episode of the Conquer podcast. Bye.